This is Sparta!
Gerard Butler is a unique actor. He is unique because he failed so many times, but these failures didn't really hurt his career. Butler managed to fail movies even starring in supporting roles, and at one time he was considered a bombshell walking in Hollywood. But then more major roles actor received, that failures hurt him more. At once Butler came to the point where he was ready to go into suspicious movies of one famous actor, but thanks to good luck, he still remains afloat. Gerard Butler, like many actors, at the beginning of his career, played nameless characters which everyone forgot after leaving the theater. Butler even appeared in a such role in Bondiana at Pierce Brosnan era. Butler was able to get a more solid role in a movie about some evil Egyptian mummy. But if it had been The Mummy with Brendan Fraser, which came out a year later, perhaps Butler's career would have gone uphill faster. However, Tale of the Mummy turned out to be the usual passing film, and Butler continued to play supporting roles. The first small breakthrough for the actor was a role in the movie Dracula 2000. When Butler received an offer to play a legendary vampire, he had already starred in The Cherry Orchard in one of the supporting roles and because of the contract, could not quit filming. Butler desperately hung on for any chance to get a more significant role, and shooting in the movie about Dracula sounded promising. And Butler was able to convince the director of Cherry Orchard to adapt his shooting schedule so that he would have time to star in Dracula. The film Dracula 2000 itself turned out to be of dubious quality. This happened because the original script was purchased by a man, whose name is not usually mentioned today, just because it had the word Dracula in the title. When producers eventually read the script, they realized that this movie cannot be shown to people, and they decided to correct it. To do this, they invited Scott Derrickson, who would later direct Doctor Strange, and called Wes Craven as a producer, who is rightly considered a master of horror. Derrickson failed to fix the script and dropped out of the project. Patrick Lussier was invited in his place. Lussier previously worked as an editor on Wes Craven films, but wanted to try himself in the role of the director. The script was corrected, but no one wanted to star in the film. So, money was thrown at Johnny Lee Miller and Christopher Plummer, and Butler, who came by advertisement in the newspaper, was appointed as lead vampire. Despite the presence of Dracula in the film and the general popularity of vampires because of Blade, Interview with the Vampire and Bram Stoker's Dracula, the film failed at the box office. Failure hit hard on acting career of Johnny Lee Miller, but Gerard Butler, on the contrary, was praised and finally noticed. Also, this year, Not Bad showed miniseries Attila, where Butler had a major role. In pre-streaming era serials rarely drew much attention and were closer to soap operas than serious cinema, but Butler perfectly embodied the role of the Hun leader and began to receive offers in the big movies. Catching his moment, Butler broke into the movie Reign of Fire for a supporting role. In the best tradition, this film failed at the box office. In doing so, all the negativity absorbed by Matthew McConaughey and Christian Bale, and Gerard Butler was able to cleverly hide behind their backs. 2003 could have been a turning point in Butler's career. He was able to leak into two blockbusters, albeit in supporting roles. The first was Tomb Raider, The Cradle of Life. Butler got into this film thanks to Daniel Craig, or rather the absence of Daniel Craig. Craig refused to star in the sequel because he decided to become a truly talented actor and left to star in the small film The Mother. Just as Craig was leaving, a bored Butler walked by the studio and producers quickly signed him for the movie. The film completely failed at the box office, burying Jan de Bont's career as director, but everyone else on the set got off with a minor scare. Butler's second blockbuster in 2003 was a sci-fi film Timeline. The film was supposed to be released in late 2002 in the coveted December box office, but it was postponed until 2003. The studio was afraid to release the original version of the film. The quality was so outrageous that Michael Crichton, the author of the original novel, said he would never sell the rights to adapt his books again. The film was remounted several times and had extra shots. Without any promotional support, the film was thrown into distribution, where it actually sank. To make matters worse, another film with Butler in one of the leading roles sank very close by. And unlike Timeline, which was abandoned to its fate, The Phantom of the Opera was not dumped, and the studio had high hopes for it. Despite the fact that the film was a long shot and had been in development for 13 years, everyone believed in it. Because it was based on the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, and the legendary Joel Schumacher was at the helm of the project. Over the years, John Travolta, Antonio Banderas and Hugh Jackman have all been cast as the Phantom. Gerard Butler got into the film by accident. Joel Schumacher really liked the film Dracula 2000 and specifically Butler, whom the director immediately signed for lead role. At the count of Phantom of the Opera, the opinions of viewers and critics strongly differed. Professionals thought that movie was passable, and all film festivals, which producers hoped for, bypassed the musical, but the audience really liked it. But because of the low ratings from professional critics, around the movie formed an unhealthy atmosphere, and the Phantom of the Opera has mediocre performance at the box office. Butler had to forget about big movies, and the small pictures in which he was sneaking in. No one was waiting at the theater. So even $20 million films like The Game of Their Lives and Butterfly on a Wheel couldn't even collect half their budgets. And Beowulf and Grendel went straight to video. Obviously, Butler's career was about to end and only a miracle could save him. And that miracle happened in 2005. In Hollywood, announced a casting for a strange movie that no one believed in, not much money was allocated for the film, and no one wanted to take him. Therefore, in the director's chair was put Zack Snyder. At that time, under his belt was just a remake of Dawn of the Dead. Zombie film perfectly performed at the box office and the audience liked it. But the main criterion for choosing Snyder was the fact that he was able to direct Dawn of the Dead on a minimal budget. And since little money was allocated for the 300, the cost-effective director who can at the same time produce a quality product was worth its weight of gold. Gerard Butler and Michael Fassbender signed because they looked good without clothes and was ready to remove these clothes on demand. Butler himself later admitted that he was 100% sure of his physical condition, but later confessed that he was wrong. Gerard says that the preparation for the role was the hardest in his entire career. The actor literally lived in the gym 4 months and did not get off the trainers even at night. The movie could have been completely different. 300 was originally made to a teenage rating because the studio bosses thought it was just another adaptation of a typical comic book. Only in the middle of the filming process Zack Snyder finally managed to convince the studio of the importance of an adult rating. One more point has to do with the unusual visual of the film, which would later become its trademark. A unique style of the film was not in the plans, it came to it already at the stage of post-production. Snyder wanted to highlight some scenes visually, but the effect was so liked by the director and producers that they decided to pass the entire film through this filter. The film hit the US box office in March 2007 and over the first weekend it took $70 million on a production budget of $65 million. It was immediately clear that the studio had a hit on its hands. At the end of the world box office, the film took $456 million. Warner Studios expected the film would collect about $150 million, roughly like the similar Sin City. It's common to attach Butler's rising career to the success of Spartans, but everyone forgets that the melodrama P.S. I Love You hit the box office next to it. On a budget of $30 million, Gerard Butler and Hilary Swank took in $156 million at the box office. After this take, Butler's career took off sharply, but he has not been able to become a successful actor. Partly bad luck is to blame for this, as some failed films with him in the lead role are loved by audiences. In 2008, Butler appeared again in 2 films. One of them was an adventure film, Nim's Island. The film has not become a great success, but it is hard to write it down as a failure. With Guy Ritchie's Rock'n'Rolla, on the other hand, things are simpler. Everything started out well for Butler here. Guy Ritchie had traditionally prepared the role of 1-2 for Jason Statham. But Statham got stuck on the set of Death Race, from which the producers refused to let him go. It was by this happy accident, Butler got into the film. The film had a budget of only $18 million and should have made money without any problems. There was no money for a large-scale advertising campaign and Rock'n'Rolla was tried to promote through the audience. To do this, it was released in limited distribution and gradually increased the number of screens. It was assumed that the rumor about the wonderful movie quickly dispersed over the internet, and after release in wide distribution, audience will rush to cinemas. But the plan did not work. Either no one wanted to see a Guy Ritchie film without Jason Statham, or because of the absence of advertising no one knew about the wonderful film. Rock'n'Rolla only managed to gross $25 million at the worldwide box office. After such abysmal box office figures, all plans to a trilogy were abandoned immediately, and Guy Ritchie fell into slavery to Warner Studios. 2009 was a watershed year for the actor. It is believed that this is where Butler showed that he could not become a big star. The Ugly Truth first hit theaters, and it is the only successful film for Butler this year. Except, at the same time Katherine Heigl's career was gaining height, and all the bonuses from the success of The Ugly Truth she got right there. Perhaps some bonuses would have gone to Butler, but Gamer burst into box office after The Ugly Truth. A lot of people were counting on the film at the time. The film was directed by the writers of Adrenaline, which everyone found offbeat, cool, and a little crazy. After the success of Adrenaline, the filmmakers had a check for $80 million and were given complete freedom of action. All this resulted in $40 million worldwide box office and mediocre reviews from critics and audiences. Toward the end of 2009, Law Abiding Citizen was released. What's funny, at the start the first place was taken by the film, Where the Wild Things Are, which would later become the biggest flop of the year. In the second week, horror movies, traditionally released around Halloween, burst into the box office. Butler and Fox surrendered under the assault of Paranormal Activity, Saw 6, and The Fourth Kind. And later, Michael Jackson finished them all off. The comedy film Bounty Hunter finally crushed Butler in 2010. The film failed to live up to expectations, and the golden raspberries flew at Butler, as well as Jennifer Aniston. Gerard decided to save his career through films aimed at film festivals and critics, rather than wide distribution and money. One of these films was Machine Gun Preacher. The film was directed by cult director Mark Forster. During production, the film was even considered a potential Oscar nominee. But when the film premiered at the Toronto Film Festival in 2011, it was immediately buried. Following the critical acclaim, it was rejected by distributors. So in most countries of the world the film did not even get into cinemas. In 2012, there were two more films with Butler that failed. Playing for Keeps and Chasing Mavericks, in which Butler wanted to show that he was still in great physical shape. But the film was not only a failure at the box office, but almost ended in tragedy. During filming, Butler performed all the stunts himself and once got hit by a surf and almost drowned. The injury was so serious that Butler was hospitalized for several weeks. Because of this incident, Butler would later refuse to star in a remake of Breaking Point. The salvation for the actor was a series of fallings that started in 2013. At that time, Hollywood decided that American democracy had not been threatened by bad people for a long time, and several movie studios almost simultaneously launched movies about the White House, the president, and various villains who decided to attack this White House. Everyone thought that White House Down, directed by Roland Emmerich, was the favorite. The $150 million budget, Channing Tatum and Jamie Foxx made it a much more solid film than the modest Olympus Has Fallen, with a half lesser budget and a fading Gerard Butler in the lead role. But White House Down, although made more money, failed to recoup its budget. And Falling Butler, despite a modest collection of $170 million, turned out to be a winner. Due to the small profits, you might have assumed that the movie would never have a sequel. But there it all lies in the strategy of the Millennium Films Company. The company sells the rights to its films to international distribution in advance, attracting potential distributors with a star name on the poster. They often recoup the cost of the film that way and make a profit on the US box office. That's why we got both a sequel and a threequel, and now a fourth part of the franchise is in development. However, things may be changing in an unknown direction here. After the scandalous showdown between Scarlett Johansson and Disney Studios, many actors decided to do the same and went to court to shake some more money out of the greedy producers. Butler also went to court to demand money from the producers of Olympus Has Fallen. According to Butler, they were owed $10 million, which he was supposed to get as percentage from the box office. Johansson was able to squeeze $40 million out of Disney. Let's see what Butler can do and whether he will have another fall after a similar one. After Butler went to court, Night Has Fallen somehow lost its release date and the film has been postponed indefinitely for now. And yet in 2016, the actor received another painful flop. It was Gods of Egypt. He himself claims that as soon as he saw the word God in the script of the movie, he immediately jumped on the nearest trainer, because he decided that for the role of the ancient god, he must look perfect. Well, the film came out at a very bad time. Gods of Egypt stepped on the same rake as Prince of Persia in 2010. Everyone criticized too many actors with white skin in the roles of Egyptians and Egyptian gods. It is believed that all this noise in the press and the internet and impacted audience reception. And the official apologies by director Alex Proyas could not remedy the situation, and the audience simply ignored the film. These days Butler has turned into some kind of little bit lucky Nicolas Cage. At the same time Butler has very strange statistics. For example, Geostorm is hopelessly failing at the box office, but another disaster film, Greenland, on the contrary, shows excellent results with a modest budget, and in the peak of the pandemic. The same Hunter Killer sinks without a chance, while Den of Thieves becomes a box office hit and receives excellent audience ratings. The actor lacked quite a bit of luck to reach the title of superstar. One more successful role and one less obvious failure, and his career could have turned out very differently. And chances for success dropped to Butler quite often. But everything is still ahead. The actor is now 52 years old. Upcoming are sequels to Greenland, Den of Thieves and Another Fall, which hopefully will not fall at the box office. And judging by the actor's last film, Last Seen Alive, we can assume that he's preparing himself for a career backup as a major action retiree. After all, Liam Neeson is not eternal. Thanks for listening. Subscribe and stay in touch.